Hi there folks, this is Raleigh Cosplay. This is the third part of my Blender tutorial. We've talked about basics of Blender already, and we looked at the main workflow I use, which involves the Boolean modifier. But today we're going to be looking at a second workflow that involves extending planes. Even though I use the Boolean workflow more frequently than this is a great workflow for many purposes, but particularly if you need something to be screen accurate, because this is actually based on using reference images and building around those. So it's particularly good for video game characters where you can easily get a front and a side view of a character or a model. And so yeah, we'll dive into that workflow. This comes directly from Benny of Kamui Cosplay. If you are a cosplayer, you probably already know Kamui Cosplay. If not, stop this video immediately, go to their channel and watch their stuff. They are the gold standard when it comes to educational content in cosplay. They are just absolutely fantastic. It's Svetlana Quint and then Benny, and they do tremendous, tremendous stuff. Buy their books, as they say in those videos. They are how I got inspired to do cosplay, these many years ago. So you should look at their material. This workflow comes from Benny's really first-rate Blender tutorial. It is linked in the comments below, so you should watch that as well. This is just a distillation of that method that he goes over in his tutorial. The way that this method works is to first import reference images. You want to have a view from two sides orthogonal to each other of whatever you are actually building. They do need to be scaled to the same, so that may require some editing in a photo editor to get them scaled properly. We'll show you some tools within Blender to do some final tweaking about that, but more or less you want a front view and a side view of whatever you're building that is scaled more or less the same. And that's particularly easy if you have, for example, an object viewer from a game, or a game has photo mode, but you just want to make sure you have a straight dead-on front and a straight dead-on side, 90-degree images. You're going to import those references. We'll talk about how to do that. We'll then align those references because they do need to be perfectly aligned within Blender. Oftentimes models from games are symmetrical, and so we'll talk about adding an optional mirror modifier, so you'll only have to do the tracing with planes for half of the object, and the other half will automatically mirror that. That's optional. That doesn't always work. Not every model is symmetrical, but many models are if you're using this workflow. So we'll talk about adding the optional mirror. We'll talk about the heart of this workflow, which is extending planes. Our previous workflows, we really looked at meshes that were in 3 dimensions. This is going to be taking individual 2-dimensional planes, extending them, using them to trace around the reference images until we have basically a shell made of those planes, and then extend those planes to make a 3-dimensional object, and continue sort of tracing out with planes until we have the shell of the object that we are creating. And then we will talk about what really is the magic of this, and that is the use of the subdivision surface modifier. That modifier is something that's going to be used in lots of different workflows. You can use it for the Boolean workflow if the models that you've imported aren't particularly smooth, but it is a way of taking these very geometrical meshes that have lots of edges and turning them to something that will print smooth and curved. It's not hard to do, but it is a little bit daunting. When I started doing this, was daunted by it. So we'll talk through how to apply the subdivision surface modifier and make those items curved where they ought to be curved, and sharp where they ought to be sharp. And that is the workflow. So let's go ahead and get into Blender. So as always, we're going to start with a brand new project. We're going to delete our camera, our cube, and our light source. And we're going to come here to Add Image Reference. These are 2 images from the object viewer of a boot from World of Warcraft. This is the front of the boot straight on. And it's going to come in, and it's sort of all a weird angle like that, so you want to reset all of these rotations that it came in with for whatever reason, and get it lined up along the axis like so, so that if I hit 1 for the front view, I'm staring at it straight on. Now we want to align it to the origin, so I'm going to scoot it up so that the bottom of this metal toe piece sits right there on the red x-axis. So that's pretty good. Then we're going to add another reference. Add image reference, and this is the side. You want to get, again, 2 images. Get rid of these weird rotations that it came in with. And then rotate it properly so that we're actually looking at the side. What we're going to see is this is not scaled properly. Like the front is much bigger than the side. Luckily, with an image, we can scale it from the corners just like we would scale a regular sort of cropping image. We're going to get the bottom of it lined up with the axis just as the other, and we'll continue to scale and just tweak. There's lots of tweaking that happens with this, this particular workflow. So just scaling and moving, trying to make sure that that tip aligns exactly with the tip, and the bottom of it is aligned exactly with the axis. And when they are, and they're aligned, that will do there, just a little bit more. And so that should be good for our purposes. So you see the tips are aligned. I see actually that this is not an entirely symmetrical image, so I'm going to scoot it over so that that point is exactly lined up there with that point on the side. Good. So those are our images aligned. I also like to, let's make sure we name them properly also. So this is the front, and this is the side. And I like to come down. You can use the image tab here or just tip on the image next to the name. I like to add the opacity at 0.7. Makes it a little easier to see through in reference. You don't have to do that. You can also like change it so only axis aligned, so you're only seeing it when you're exactly aligned with the axis. Some people like that. I don't mind it so much, but I do think the transparency is somewhat useful. Name these references. And the last reference we're going to add, this is a symmetrical object if you're looking at it. Many items in games are, and therefore we can make our life literally twice as easy, twice as fast by coming here to empty, single arrow, and it's going to put it at the origin. There's now an arrow pointing up the z-axis on the origin. We're going to name it mirror, because we're going to use that for the mirror modifier. That will allow us to mirror our work along that axis. So those are our references. Now, we're going to go ahead. One thing I should say is we're going to be switching back and forth between the straight front view and the straight side view quite a bit. The 1 and the 3 keys will do that. You can also use the star up here to switch, but just be prepared for lots of that switching back and forth. Now we're going to add a mesh, but instead of a 3-dimensional mesh, we're just going to add a plane. And it's just 2-dimensional. It's like laying on the floor right now. So we're going to go ahead and rotate it up. We're going to align ourselves to the front view. And what we're going to do is we're going to trace out this sort of bevel you see around the edge of the toe using this plane. I'm going to put it here into X-ray mode so we can easily see the vertices of this. I'm going to scale it down a little bit because it's going to be matching our bevel. Now, before I get any further on this, like I said, this is symmetrical, so we're going to add a modifier to this plane. Modifiers, again, are here, and that modifier is the mirror. We're going to select as the mirror object our error that we called mirror, and now it is mirrored around the x-axis around that mirror object. So anything we do to it happens to the other one as well. It's going to cut our work in half. We want to make sure that we turn on clipping, which will become important as these items run into each other a little bit later. It's not so important now. And we're just going to take it up and get it aligned with that bevel there. Then we're going to switch to edit mode. You could hit tab as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to move these vertices around, move vertices, such that we are outlining this little bevel that you see here, this edge of the boot. And just a little part of it, just here, it does not have to be perfect at all. But now we see we've sort of got the edge of this boot, the very tip. But that is only for the front. If we come to the side, we see that the bevel curves to the back, but our piece doesn't do that yet. So what we're going to do is we are going to move our side pieces, our vertices, bit by bit until they line up with the side. So we've selected this vertex, we come to the side and we scoot it back, always just along that axis, until it lines up with where it should be on the side view. And then we'll do that several more times, so you'll see plenty of that. Then we're just going to extend this plane down. We'll select this edge, hit E for extend. That will extend the edge into a new plane, and we just extend it down and extend it down a bit more, extend it again, extend it all the way to the edge. And then we're going to go again vertex by vertex, not edge, but vertex, and we're going to get it aligned with our reference image. There's lots of fiddly tweaking that happens here. So if you're the sort of person who likes fiddly tweaking, this might be a good workflow for you. Again, you're only going to be moving along the two axes of this image. You will never be moving it without the handles or without G and then ZX if you're using the key bindings, because you only want to move it along the axes that are represented by this image, because then once again we're going to choose our points, move to the side, and then move them back along that axis. And so this is that switching back and forth. You always want to go to the front, choose your vertex, move it to the side, move it only along this axis, and so forth and so on. You always want to go to the front view first, because it is very easy to select the wrong axis, the wrong vertex, and move it into the wrong place. And then your whole geometry is screwed up as it starts getting complicated. So you always want to be going back and forth so you don't slip a stitch. It's a little bit like crochet, and it's very easy to get lost. So we've got our top lined up. Now we're going to get the bottom of our bevel lined up. It has less far to go in, like so. It has less of a curve. Going back and forth all the way down. This can be a very soothing thing or a very annoying thing, depending on sort of how your brain works. Nearly got it there. And then this last little weird one comes all the way back there. He moves up a little bit. These move them a little too far. Okay, and that lines up. And then if we were to curve around, now we see, oh, that sort of looks like a curve. And oh, on the other side as well, we see it mirrored there. So now we're beginning to see a shape beginning to come up. It's a very rough shape, but that's fine for now. So we're going to talk about how we unmake that. So we align ourselves to the front. We're just going to do the very front of this toe. We're not going to sketch out the whole thing, but let's start combining these, bring them together at the center. So once again, I'm going to align myself to the center, to the front. I'm going to choose edges, choose this edge. I'm going to hit E for extend and bring it to the center. And because we turn on clipping, where it hits the center line, it won't pass through. It'll just meet the other one. So we'll do the same thing, E for extend, bring it on over, and it meets. E for extend, and we're just sort of making the front. And it doesn't have to be perfect. You notice there's some gaps between each of these at the top and the bottom. We'll deal with those in just a moment. Right now we're just extending our edges, making these planes as they come across the front here, and then they meet at the center with their mirrored compatriot. Then to get rid of these weird, zoom in, these gaps, oh, these are bad. And if we try to print with these, bad things will happen. Luckily, very simple solution. Choose vertex. Select our two vertices. I'll zoom in so you can see them. And then right-click, merge vertices at center. Those two vertices are now one, and those two lines are now one line. And we're going to do that with every one of these. Select, merge vertices at center. Select, merge vertices at center, select, merge vertices at center, and all the way down. At center, and then we've got these last sort of little weird ones as it curves at the bottom. And center, and collapse, merge vertices at center, and now we have something that if we come to the side, oh look, we've got this sort of little front shape, and it's mirrored on the other side. It's hard to see our mirror because it's so transparent, but it is being mirrored on the other side here. And let me remind you that this mirror is just a modifier. It's not been applied yet. So there is no actual object there. If I come into object mode, if I tab, now it looks like, oh, hey, it looks like there's an object there. In fact, it looks like a mirror, but that's because in object mode, it is showing us what will happen when we apply this mirror modifier. But it's not actually been applied yet. And for various reasons, we don't want to apply it until we're a little further along. We'll talk about that. But going back to edit mode, and we see it's much more grayed out because it's not really there yet. So this gives us, I'm going to scoop this guy a little bit. Actually, I'm going to make my life easier and just move this guy in for purposes of demonstration here. Along like that. Okay. So we have now this sort of shell, but it needs depth. What if we were really doing this? What we would do is continue extending along the side now and build this whole sort of metal frame. But for the purposes of this demo, we're just going to assume that all we want is this very front toe piece. Now, right now, as I said, it's quite ill-defined. We're going to be using a modifier to make it nice and smooth, but let's say that we wanted a little bit more detail. We wanted it to more closely conform to the shape here. Well, you make something conform by having vertices, and so you can add vertices with this loop cut tool, which you can just put it here, and it's going to add edges, and those edges there are now vertices, and so now we can more accurately move these vertices to better match exactly the edges of our reference images. And again, if we move them here, we want to make sure we're always also making sure that they're properly aligned at the side as well. So that is one way of manually adding vertices to ensure that your shapes are proper. It's still not very smooth, but the smoothing will come in later. But right now it is just a shell. It's just the outermost face, and we tried to print it, there'd be no depth there. So what we need to do is add some depth. We could use a solidify modifier, but I find it's actually a little bit easier in this case to select all of our faces, just like so, hit E for extend, just as we've been extending our edges, and just drag it out this little bit, and now we have added some thickness to it. We've taken those faces, we've extended them along, and now we see there is an outer face, and now we see there's an inner face, and there are faces that connect them. So now we have something that's much more like a three-dimensional object. In fact, if I come to object mode here, and let's take it out of transparency, it looks, oh, that looks like sort of the toe of this boot. Okay, that's pretty good. It's awfully lumpy though, so how do we deal with the lumps? That is what we're going to deal with next. So then how do we smooth out this shape? What you noticed is that the more vertices we had, even when we were doing the loop cut, the closer to a curve it approximates. So we're going to apply another modifier that is going to subdivide all of those surfaces many, many times, making it smoother and smoother and smoother. This is the subdivision surface modifier. And as soon as we do that, we see, oh my, that's much smoother. We can make it even smoother and smoother by upping up the levels of the viewport and upping up the renders. It takes quite a lot of computing power to do that, and now this is more like a shell. It's very, very smooth. We could print that out, it'd be very smooth. Notice it's still just a modifier. If I come into tab object mode, oh my, that looks very, very smooth. But if I tab back out of it, we see, oh, all of the edges of the real object are still there. This is just showing us what it will look like when this rule is applied. Just so, our mirror on the other side also doesn't really exist yet. So what it's saying is this is what it will look like when this mirror is applied and our subdivision is applied. We're going to wait a little bit of time to apply our modifiers for reasons that you'll see in a moment. The trouble is, this is very smooth, but it's also not right? If we actually look at the object, there along the bevel, there's a hard edge toward the bottom of the bevel and a hard edge toward the top. So we need to be able to tell it what edges to actually smooth and what edges not subdivide. Luckily, we can absolutely do that. Here in edit mode, select an edge, and you'll see here under transform this wonderful thing under edge data called crease. If we set that to 1, it says, hey, don't bend that curve. And so we're going to select all of these edges that we don't want smoothed, and we're going to tell them, hey, the mean crease for this is 1, which means we're not going to smooth it at all. And we're going to do the same thing with our other edges here. And this, by the way, is why I didn't apply the mirror yet, because if I did, I'd have to be clicking all of these faces on that side as well. And we're going to say our mean crease for this also is 1. And so now we see those are not getting smoothed out in the same way. And then finally, let's go ahead and make the back edge solid as well. So again, I'm just holding down Shift and selecting all of these edges and saying these edges, not that little edge I misclicked, are not going to be subject to the same smoothing because their mean crease is 1. Okay, now we come around. Yes, that looks much more the thing. It gets smoothed except for the points where I don't want it smoothed. Very nice. And so that is subdivision surface. There's also this simple mode, which is much blockier. Catumli-Clark is what you want to use, but to do that, as you've seen here, you're going to have to say which edges you don't want smoothed, or the thing will become far too smooth. But that is the basic workflow. We're going to go ahead and now apply these modifiers. To do that, we need to be in object mode. We're going to choose apply, and we're going to choose apply the mirror as well. And now this object is the thing itself, because if I go back to edit mode, oh my word, look at all those faces, look at all those vertices. That is what is actually happening with the subdivision surface. It is taking all of our planes and literally chopping them into smaller and smaller planes such that we have a much smoother surface. And because that then makes this, if I need to move my vertices around, oh, now there's hundreds of them. So you want to apply those modifiers quite late on because it becomes next to impossible to modify. It's not impossible. It's just, you have to select whole sections of vertices to move if you want to make adjustments to it once you have applied those modifiers. But that is the plane extension workflow. So that is the plane extension workflow from Benny from Kamui Cosplay. And those along with the Boolean workflow, give you 2 workflows that you can follow to build pretty much whatever you want. To wrap up this tutorial, up next we have a 4th video that when I started I didn't think we would necessarily need, but realized that trying to get everything into 3 videos was a little bit tight. So this covers some more advanced concepts. One of them is applying UV textures for things. So if you need a wood grain or a stone grain in your 3D print, we'll talk about how to do that. We'll talk about preparing those prints to export from Blender in a way that is most easily digestible by your slicing software. And we'll also talk about some other resources out on the web that you can look at to improve your Blender modeling. And so that will be covered in our next and final video. At this point in time, I'm supposed to tell you to like, comment, and subscribe. Please only do that if it seems useful and valuable to you, and this material has seemed useful and valuable to you. And in the meantime, good luck with all of your 3D modeling.